The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 898, coming to you on Monday the 23rd of April 2018. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic Delinquent Fathers and Juvenile Violence. No preliminaries except, as usual, for me to send out my deepest condolences to all bereaved families. Delinquent fathers and juvenile violence. As those of you who follow the news or read the newspapers would have realized, and as I mentioned in my discussion last week, there was a two-day conversation, it was called, at the Methodist Church Hall, sponsored by the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Christian Council, involving other churches, members of civil society, discussing the topic crime and violence in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And a noted criminologist from the University of the West Indies gave the feature address. I had hoped to have seen a report indicating that some discussion was held on the question of violence as it relates to punishment. But I didn't see any reportage to that effect. I will return to the theme one of these programs, DV. But as has been rightly said at that consultation, there are many aspects of violence in our societies, many causes of violence, and the experts are the ones to analyze those causes and give us their findings. But from a layman's point of view, it is quite clear for those of us who have grown up in this society, or indeed in any Caribbean society, that a lot of the violence about which we complain involves young men. I wouldn't say young people because I don't want to suggest that there is any appreciable involvement of women, although some women do get involved in violence, but as compared to men, the numbers are statistically negligible. So we take it for granted that the evidence of our eyes and ears is that a lot of the violence which takes place in society involves young men. And on this program, I would like to suggest that there is a link between the tendency of many young men to commit acts of violence is closely linked with the question of delinquent fatherhood. And I will explain what I mean. Let me give a rough definition of the term delinquent father. A delinquent father is one who neglects the maintenance and upbringing of his children. I will not go into the causes of that said delinquency, but throughout the length and breadth of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if you are really honest with yourself, you would realize that a lot of the men who father children do not support the children they father in any meaningful way, unless they happen to be living in matrimony with the mothers of those children whom they father. It is rare that you find a married man not supporting his children. Rare. Unless he has abandoned the home and goes and lives either by himself or with a woman to whom he is not married. But that is a rare occurrence in this society, as far as my own personal experience is concerned. Inasmuch as we have a very high rate of persons being born out of wedlock, and I represent that category in that I was born out of wedlock. Mother and father were not married when I was born and never got married to each other when I was in my life. So I am not suggesting that I consider it necessarily degrading for one to have been born out of wedlock. It all depends on what opportunities one received as a child growing up, and to the extent to which one made use of those opportunities. But in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the vast majority of live births occur in circumstances where those children have been fathered by men not living in wedlock with the mothers of those children. But let me separate from that those fathers who, while they may not be married to the mothers, live in a household with the mothers of their children and with the children. Generally, in my view, those fathers do take care of their responsibilities towards the children. I can't swear for all of them. I mean, some men have children living in a house with one woman and they go and feather their nests elsewhere. I'm not talking about that, just that's generally. Men who live in a household with their children and the mothers of those children generally do their best within the circumstances of their livelihood to maintain and bring up the children. Where we have serious problems, however, is the situation in which the men, the fathers of children, are not living in the same household with the mothers of their children, or indeed with the children. If you do a statistical analysis of the situation, I suspect you will find that in the vast majority of cases in which young boys are being brought up by a single parent, and that parent is the mother, with the father not around and not contributing to the welfare of these boys, you will find in a large number of those cases, those boys grow up with delinquent tendencies. That is, they're hard to go with. And as they grow older and slip into teenage years, they drop out of school and they undertake all sorts of antisocial behaviors. Many of such behaviors manifesting themselves into criminal activities. So that by delinquency, I mean the state in which young boys find themselves out of order, totally out of control. Now, one of the points which, according to what I read in the newspaper reports, that the professor of criminology established, is that societies tend to go through phases where violence is concerned. And the professor warned us here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that we are going through a phase similar to that he experienced in Trinidad and Jamaica. And he warned us not to slip into the third phase. The third phase is where things get totally out of control and crime and violence overtake this society. So we get back to the situation of fatherhood in the context of the fathers not living in the same households as the mothers. We all know the excuses which a lot of men give for not supporting their children. You see, the pattern develops as follows, not just here in St. Vincent and Grenadines, but elsewhere in the Caribbean and in other countries outside the Caribbean. A young girl falls in love with a young man. They date, and eventually she gets pregnant. That young man may or may not acknowledge that he is the father of the child, but let us assume he acknowledges paternity. Then, as they both get older, they drift apart. The young man attaches himself to a different young woman. The young mother attaches herself to a different boy, a different young man. And then before you know it, she is pregnant a second time and has child number 2 for man number 2. There are cases where this situation multiplies itself, so that in several cases, right here in this country, you find a woman with several children fathered by several different men. Now, the father of child number 1 may have supported the child for the first few years of the child's life, but when the woman gets child number 2, which is not his, because they have drifted apart, he says he is not going to help to mind another man's child, meaning child number 2. So his maintenance becomes spasmodic. That is only now and then, as he feels like making a lot of style and treating the mother of his child with humility, with indignities. he humiliates her. When the mother sends the child to him to ask for something, he takes it out on the child and gives the child some rough messages to come back, take back to the mother. So that father number one slacks off his maintenance of child number one. Father number two is reluctant in turn to be seen to be supporting not only his child, he being the father of child number two, but he doesn't want to be seen to supporting child number one because it is not his child. And so the scenario multiplies itself until the several fathers who have fathered children by the one woman are all reluctant to give money to the mother because they say they don't want their money to mine another man's child. Meanwhile, the mother is under severe pressure. In good faith, she has had relationships with these men. In the early days, they talk about her beauty and how she looks nice and so on, and they flatter her, and the usual deceptions that men get up to. And when the men get what they want and give her an unwanted child, off they go. Now, young boys being brought up in that context of seeing a mother being humiliated, of not having a father figure as a permanent fixture in the home, if at all, with the mother struggling to maintain several children and to bring them up without the help of any of the fathers, or perhaps one of several fathers may give her something. She is trying to make ends meet. She cannot find the strength or the resources to properly discipline these young boys. The girls she usually manages with from a disciplinary point of view. But then when they too, her children, her girl children, become teenagers, they make the mother a grandmother before her time. Therefore, the presence of so many households operating with a single mother, and where the single mother takes ill or migrates, then a grandmother or an auntie or a nenen trying to bring up these children. Boys growing up in that environment drift inevitably into delinquency. Before you know it, they are dabbling in illicit drugs. Then they get infatuated with guns. And before you know it, they are established members of gangs into which gang culture they submerge themselves. And part of the gang philosophy is that you have to prove your credentials as a bad man. You have to demonstrate tangible acts of criminality, sometimes involving violence, sometimes involving shooting people, to demonstrate that you are worth being a respected member, respected inverted commas, of the gang. Or probably I should have used the word of the associational grouping, a word which has entered the lexicology of social discourse in recent months. But let us call them gangs. I mean, it's for what they are. So if we can see the connection between inadequate or indifferent maintenance of children and their proper upbringing on the one hand, and juvenile delinquency, juvenile crime, juvenile violence on the other hand, then we are not really analyzing the society with any degree of honesty. We are keeping our eyes closed and pretending that a certain state of affairs has not been existing in the society. Now, in about 1992, when the Family Court Act was passed, and a couple of years after that, when the Family Court was established, we got an institution specializing in family problems of this nature. And the Family Court has helped, I believe, in a year or two. It may well be time for them to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Family Court. But that institution has helped a lot, and I know it for a fact, in providing mothers with a forum to which they can go in the legal system to get some relief for their grievances. They can take the father to the family court and allege paternity. But then sometimes the father insists on denying paternity, but fortunately the family court has the power to order blood tests and paternity tests, DNA tests, to try to establish paternity. But even then, that institution needs to be continuously strengthened. As matters stand, there are 3 bailiffs on the establishment of the family court. Right now, only 2 are functioning because one is on pre-retirement leave. But when you think of the whole of St. Vincent and Grenadines, and you think that these bailiffs have to go and serve summonses on fathers against whom paternity suits have been brought, and chase them down for payments and so on, you realize that the 3 bailiffs is but a token of what is really needed to police the system properly. And the fathers know it, so that they take advantage of this weakness in the administrative structure. But the law pertaining to children, or I should say the laws, because there are several of them, are clear, detailed, and if followed, would make a big, big difference to the welfare of children in the society. Unfortunately, because of the sheer numbers of delinquent fathers, and because for one reason or another many mothers are reluctant to bring complaints against the fathers of their children, or let me say the alleged fathers, for those who might say, well, you can't be sure in every case that the man who is challenged as being the father of X child is really the father of that child. Well, the system has means of having that established. But a lot of mothers simply, for good reason, cannot stand the spectacle of going to court to seek maintenance for their children. I would urge the mothers to overcome their reluctance. You see, a mother alone can't make a child. That's a truism. And where the father of the child is available, I mean, there are times when the father might die, or the father might go away, or for some other reason the father is simply not physically available. One could understand that. But there are many able-bodied, too many able-bodied men in the society who have fathered children in circumstances where they are in a position to assist in supporting the children but do not do so. And this phenomenon has to be addressed in a meaningful way. It is no point going after the product of delinquency and not try to tackle the causes of delinquency. And the society needs to get much more serious about strengthening the position of mothers who are struggling to bring up children that they alone did not bring into this world. The mother may have been the vessel by which the child came into this world, but she alone did not impregnate herself. But you see, this thing is taken as a joke, and nobody cries shame at a man who refuses to mind his child. Never mind the Calypsonian who sung Mind Your Picnic, and they have dealt with that topic and similar topics in previous programs. In days gone by, and I keep harping back, in days gone by, it seemed to me that men took their responsibilities to support the children that they had with women with whom they were not living together in a stable union much more seriously. These days it's a big joke. Some men having children, dropping them here, boop, 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 here, there, and everywhere. Having children in 3, 4, 5 different villages, 3, 4, 5 different women, and not looking back to assist the mothers and not being there to nurture, especially the boy children, and bring them up with a sense of values. So what you have is a lot of boy children who have not been supported by the fathers, and who in turn will become fathers of children whom they will turn around and refuse to support. The problem will therefore multiply. And if we're not careful, it will explode in our faces. I beseech all fathers, once you know a child is yours, or you have no reason to believe it is not yours, do what you can to help the mother with the child. Even if you're not working, at least you can do something. Go and visit the child, take the child for sea baths every now and then. Bond with your sons. Otherwise, those sons will come up just like you and might even be worse than you. And if that happens, where will the society be? Food for thought, my brothers and sisters. So that is all from this program of the Law and You, program number 898. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, DB, for another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel R. Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.